By the time this video is edited and released,
I will no longer be on full-time reserve service.
let's roll the intro. Okay, in order to clarify my employment situation, let's take a look at how employment works in the reserves. As Transcan Do pointed out, you're unemployed, but you're still with the Navy, so you're not. They don't just hire people from the street, you can get something somewhere else in the Navy. Technically, this is true. Let's take a closer look at how it works. As you may know if you follow my videos, the reserve is primarily part-time employment with some opportunities for full-time employment. We have three classes of employment, Class A, Class B, and Class C. Class A employment is part-time employment, an average of 1 evening per week and 1 weekend per month, running from September until May. Class B is short-term, full-time employment contracts, ranging from minimum of 13 days in length up to a maximum of 3 years in length. And Class C is deployment on operations or time serving at sea. I was on a Class B employment contract here at HMCS Chippewa as a recruiter. That contract has come to an end and I was not offered a contract extension or a new contract. That means that I'm reverting back to Class A employment, so I am not releasing from the Canadian Armed Forces. I'm still a member of the Naval Reserve, but I will not have to get up for work in the morning or receive a paycheck until the part-time employment fires back up again in September, and at that point it will only be a couple hours a week, 1 evening a week and 1 weekend per month. So I think that it would be accurate to say that I'm unemployed. So that leads to the next question. A number of you asked, what is next for you? Stack Attack 943 said, what are your career goals moving forward with the Navy? Also, thank you for all the help you've given myself and others in the Navy over these past years. Your videos have been an inspiration. Fair winds and following seas. Thank you, Stack Attack. The short answer is I don't know exactly what I'm going to do, but I have a plan. I'm looking to transition to the civilian workforce while continuing with Class A part-time employment with the Naval Reserve and also working on my Prairie Sailor channel. That doesn't mean that I wouldn't be open to another full-time contract if I get a good offer. I've kind of thought over the last couple of years that with the success of the Prairie Sailor channel, that someone from public affairs or recruiting at the national level or headquarters would approach me and say, hey, we're really liking the work that you're doing. Would you be interested in working for us in some capacity? That hasn't happened yet, and I'm not really counting on it anymore. I'm looking at all of my options. All right, enough about me. Let's get to some recruiting questions. Can I join the reserves as a type 1 diabetic? There is an answer to questions about pre-existing medical conditions on forces.ca. It's not in the main menu, but in the Help Center, it's in the frequently asked questions. I will leave a link in the description below. In the Help section, there is a list of conditions which have this description. Medical conditions that may result in you being not eligible to join the Canadian Armed Forces or result in a significant delay in joining. This list is not exhaustive. You are encouraged to apply even if you are affected by one or more of these conditions, as applications are assessed on a case-by-case basis. And as you can see, diabetes type 1 or 2 or hyperthyroidism is on the list, so you'll want to talk to medical staff before you progress with your application. The next question is about basic training. Jennifer Napier asks, I will be heading out shortly to begin BMQ as a reservist. I need to take my computer along for my civilian job. Is there Wi-Fi available, or do I need to create a hotspot with my data? I was recently a basic military qualification instructor, so I can give you accurate information as far as Naval Reserve basic military qualification at Camp Vimy at CFB Valcartier. The rules are that your civilian laptop will be locked up in civilian storage, the civilian lockup, which is basically a big sea container with a lock on the door, and you will not have access to it for the majority of the time. You'll have access to civilian lockup for a few hours each week on Sundays. So my advice is to let your civilian employer know that you may not have access to your computer the majority of the time, and to not expect to have very much work done on your civilian job while you're on basic military qualification. The good news is you will have a little bit more access to your phone. You can keep your phone with you in your mod tent as long as it's locked in your barrack box and off during the day, and you'll have access to it for an hour or so each evening and additional time on the weekend, so you could at least answer emails on your phone. There is Wi-Fi on Camp Vimy, however, I found it a little bit unreliable, so you may have to use your data. Next question is from Rid. I want to join the Navy as a university student. Any advice? Yes, there are many different entry programs for university students. We'll talk about full-time entry programs and part-time entry programs because I'm not sure what your situation is. First of all, for non-commissioned members, that is skilled trades, there is the Non-Commissioned Member Subsidized Training and Education Plan, NCM STEP. This is training or education for authorized courses of study related to military occupations. So on forces.ca, which I will link, there is a list of all the approved programs that qualify for this plan. So you can get paid education if you're an NCM, not just if you are an officer. It's a great program. The next one is the Regular Officer Training Plan, or ROTP. This is for officers who are full-time regular force, and you will be paid a salary while you attend school. I will add here that under the ROTP program, there is also the option to go to the Royal Military College. That is an additional application process to be accepted into RMC. I will also leave the link in the description for the admissions process for RMC. The RMC also has the ILOI program, the Indigenous Leadership Opportunity Year. This is a one-year preparatory education program open to Canadian Indigenous peoples that is done at the RMC, the Royal Military College, located in Kingston, Ontario. Speaking of Indigenous entry programs, I will also mention here the RAVEN program, which is the reserve version of the Indigenous entry program. It is hosted in Esquimalt, BC. It is a 6-week program. It's considered equivalent to basic military qualification. At the end of the RAVEN program, graduates will be able to choose whether they want to transfer into the reserves, transfer into the regular force, or they also have no obligation to continue service in the Canadian Armed Forces. And finally, we have undergraduate and graduate specialty programs. So these are for unique degrees for specialized careers like social work, chaplain, medical officer. So you can take a look at the specialized programs that are available. Now let's take a look at the part-time options. So you can be a reservist and receive some paid education as well. It is called the Self-Development Education Expense Reimbursement. Primary reserve members may be reimbursed for studying at Canadian university or college to get a degree or a diploma. The education reimbursement is up to 50% of your expenses. It's a maximum of $2,000 per year that you'll receive, and the maximum benefit is $8,000 total for the duration of your career. One more option that I'd like to mention is the Naval Experience Program. So if you're graduating high school and you're planning on going to university, you could consider doing a gap year of the Naval Experience Program, which is a 1-year program with the Navy where you get to job shadow and try out all the different career opportunities that the Navy has to offer. You'll travel to the coast with all expenses paid, your accommodations and food, and you'll receive a full salary, which is roughly $43,000. And at the end of the 1 year, you have no obligation to continue. You can choose to go full-time Navy if you like it so much. You don't need to go to school, or you can go full-time Navy and do any of these other programs we just talked about. You can also switch to the reserves and go to a civilian university and receive the education reimbursement that we just talked about, but you'll have $43,000 in the bank to help pay for your expenses and tuition as you go through university and still be serving part-time in the Navy. And finally, there's no obligation to continue with service. So if you do the Naval Experience Program and decide it's not for you, just take your money and run and go to school, and you've got some money saved for tuition. Moving on, we've got 3 great questions from a brand new sailor who is just enrolled at HMCS York, was kind enough to send me this message to let me know. Enrolled into HMCS York as a bosun. Honestly, sir, if it wasn't for your YouTube videos, I wouldn't have even known about the Navy Reserves. Thank you for all the information you post there. It makes a huge difference. Thank you very much for the kind message. It always feels good to get those messages, to know that my videos are valuable to people and helping them out in their application to the Canadian Armed Forces. So let's take a look at the questions. What advice would you give new recruits who just signed on to a Naval Reserve unit? My advice to new recruits in the reserves is to get as involved as you can early on in your career. It's a lot easier to go on training courses, exercises, even deployments when you're young and have a little bit more freedom before you have Other commitments like children and full-time civilian jobs can make it a little bit more difficult. The next piece of advice is to do what is best for you in your career. You don't need to put the needs of the organization ahead of your own needs and your family's needs unless there's an emergency and you're ordered to do so. If you have a choice, choose what you think is going to be best for you, your family, and your career. This may seem a little cynical, but you don't want to burn out or become resentful. If you want to have a successful career, you need to take care of yourself. Next question. Looking back on your career and your time spent in the Navy, what did you do in your career that made you successful? Quote. I would say that one of the things that made me successful with my career progression early on was that I was always looking for every opportunity to do something more, looking for secondary duties, looking for a special project or role that I could get involved in. I was never really satisfied with just doing my job. Sometimes you hear in the military not to volunteer for things, especially if you don't know what it is. Well, I disagree. I volunteered for every opportunity that I could, and it really did help me out progressing in my career early on. I think one of the things that has made me successful as a recruiter is that I really just want to share the experience that I have had with other people. I've had a positive experience with the Naval Reserve in my career, and I want other people to be able to enjoy the same opportunities and benefits that I have. And I think that that comes across in the way that I talk and interact with people. I do realize that I am privileged and not everyone will have the same experience as me, but overall, I can genuinely recommend the reserves as a positive career opportunity, especially for young people getting started in their professional career. I think that comes across in the way that I communicate with people recruiting. And looking back at those around you, who would you say stood out in your Naval Reserve unit, and what did they do that distinguished them from others? This is a great question and really got me thinking and looking back at my career and remembering some people that helped me out along the way. To go right to the beginning, my recruiter at HMCS Chippewa, the person who recruited me, was Petty Officer Andre Shepard, and we're still friends. He is on the board of directors of the Naval Museum of Manitoba, so we see each other and we work together. He feels like he passed the torch. There was someone else in between who I'll mention in a moment, but passed the torch on to me, and we're now working in a similar career. So that was pretty impactful. Next up, we've got Master Sailor Fitzgerald, who was my basic military qualification instructor. Sailor Fitzgerald was a fantastic instructor. I had a really good experience on my basic military qualification. I talked all about it in my BMQ Is It Easy Now video, which I will link. You can check it out after this. One of my favorite memories, well, first of all, he was very good at instilling discipline, but being fair and not being abusive or the negative things that you might hear about basic military qualification. And I think that he impacted my instructional style quite a bit when I became an instructor later in my career. But one of the things I remember was we did drill outside for seemed like countless endless hours on hot days in the summer in Borden, Ontario, where it gets very hot, and roasting in the sun, and I didn't even notice that I did it. We were on the parade square, and I guess while sitting and blistering in the hot sun, just a tiny lick of the lips to wet your chapped lips on parade, and I remember him shouting at me, "Get that tongue back in your mouth!" Like, didn't even know I had done it, and he was on it. You could see it discreetly licking your lips on parade. So he was on it. He was handing out discipline sandwiches. He was great. I really liked Master Fitzgerald. Next up, we've got Lieutenant Commander Al Fillingham, who is currently the Executive Officer of HMCS Chippewa and is also retiring right away, recently announced his retirement. When I first joined, he was still a non-commissioned member. He was a Petty Officer second class, and he took over as the leader in the band when I was playing in the band while he was still an NCM. At the time, as a new member, maybe I didn't realize it, but now looking back, certainly being the head of department as a non-commissioned member before he took his commission, that must have been difficult for him, and he did a fantastic job. He put a lot of trust in his junior sailors. He really let us do our thing when we had crazy ideas, because we were motivated and we really wanted to do a lot of new and experimental things, and he gave us the support we needed to do that, and it has really morphed the department into what it is today. So I really appreciated that. Next up, we've got Chief Fred Haight, who was the coxswain of the unit. early in my career. He was also coxswain of the National Band of the Naval Reserve in 2007, which is the last time that it was hosted here in Winnipeg. The National Band spent the whole summer in the Prairie Provinces, and we were hosting. It was really cool. He was a great leader. He was pretty old school with his discipline, but again, he took care of his sailors. I remember when he was the coxswain of the National Band, he was really on top of everyone for their dress and deportment, and let us know about it at high volume and intensity when we did something wrong. But also, he supported his sailors, and he knew how to have a good time. I have very vivid memories of taking the duty vans to the drive-in movie theater one night. We got away with that. And another time, he hosted a party for the group at his own personal cabin. And we stayed out there, and he had a large property where we all were able to set up tents on the lawn. He's retired now, so he's not getting any in trouble. He knew how to throw a party, and we had a really good time when he was in charge. Next up, we've got Lieutenant Commander Paul Stiff, who was the commanding officer of Chippewa for a chunk of time during my formative years. And again, he was very, very supportive of the initiatives of our department. When we wanted to do crazy things, he was always ready to say yes. And we really progressed kind of in achieving our mandate and our mission here in the Naval Reserve because of that, making a bigger public profile for the unit. I'm really proud of the work that we did, and we couldn't have done it without his support. Next up, we've got Chief Lajoie, Lenny Lajoie, who was the recruiter immediately before me, who helped get me hired into this role 8 years ago. And we have very different styles. He's a very old school recruiter. He was set up a booth at every mall in the city and shake hands all day type of guy, and that worked really well for him. He has set the standard across the country. He's worked in many different units and worked as the Western Regional Outreach and Attractions Manager. He knew how to shake hands and to do those in-person events that everywhere he could go. I'm taking a bit of a different approach, connecting with people across the country online, but everyone's got their own style, and I learned a lot from him. I have a lot of respect for Chief Lajoie. He was very good at what he did, and he was an inspiration to me. Okay, let's get back to some more recruiting-centric questions here. Trying not to talk about myself too much. I put chapters down below, so if you want to fast forward to the information, go for it. Next question. Do I have the choice of which official language I can complete my training in, and is there any training which is in English or French only? Yes, you can complete all training courses in the official language of your choice. For example, when I was a basic military qualification instructor, we had English platoons and we had French platoons. We had to work together a little bit, so you have to understand the drill commands in both languages, but you can choose the official language for your training. Next up, a question from Day Killa. Sounds tough. Has a question about math. What level of math should I study for the CFAT? That's a great question. First of all, check out my Pass the CFAT video, which I'll link at the end. Actually, the first answer I would have given, the book answer, is grade 10 math, because it's a grade 10 qualification for entrance into the Canadian Armed Forces. However, I have a 13-year-old who is currently in grade 8, and I was very recently helping her study for exams, and I noticed the math questions, many of them were very similar to what is on the aptitude test. So I would say grade 8 to 10 math is what you're going to see. Especially the things that I was seeing in the grade 8 math was projections of shapes for the spatial awareness, like having different patterns of what a cube could look like unfolded, which one is the correct one. Stuff like that is going to be in the spatial awareness section. And as far as the problem-solving math section, it's a lot of the types of questions you're going to have skills like converting fractions to percentages, using ratios, and things like that, which I recently learned is what they're doing in grade 8. So yeah, a lot of grade 8 math, and then of course a little bit of grade 9, grade 10 math in there as well, because some of the questions on the test are more difficult. Another question here, can Americans join? The answer is no. You must be a Canadian citizen or a permanent resident of Canada in order to join the Canadian Armed Forces. You can join if you have dual citizenship, Canadian citizenship and American citizenship. However, you should also be aware that if you have dual citizenship, your security clearance might take a little bit longer. Another question I'll answer, even though it wasn't your question, but I get it a lot, is what if I have previous military experience or I'm currently serving military member in another country, especially like a Commonwealth country. The Canadian Armed Forces does not currently offer any lateral transfer program from a foreign military, Commonwealth or otherwise, to the Canadian Armed Forces. There is a process in place for foreign citizens with military service in another country to apply as a foreign skilled military applicant. This process requires the individual to go through Immigration, Refugees, and Citizenship Canada to obtain permanent resident status. The CAF may accept applicants under this entry scheme to fill highly specialized positions, and as such, the process is very selective. So if you have a highly specialized skill that the Canadian Armed Forces is in need of, and you're not a Canadian citizen, and you have military experience from another country, you can apply through this program here. Other than that, you need to be a Canadian citizen or a permanent resident of Canada. We got a question here from 50. What is the best MRE menu? MRE stands for Meals Ready to Eat and is the name for U.S. military rations. In Canada, we call them IMPs, Individual Meal Packs. And I'll be honest, in my experience in the Naval Reserve, we do not eat a lot of rations. We have a galley, is what we call a kitchen in the Navy, here at the unit, so we have cooks who cook for us. Even when we go on an exercise, like Exercise Prairie Sailor, we usually bring an entire field kitchen or field galley and have cooks preparing meals. We don't typically ruck into the wilderness and set up a bivouac and eating IMPs and rations like they do in the Army. If you want to know more about food in the Navy and what we eat, I recommend following RCN Rocky. RCN Rocky is a cook in the Navy who does a great job on social media of showing everyone what being a cook in the Navy is like and what we eat. Another good question from I Am a Car Freak here. Becoming an instructor for ROTC will help with the unemployment. He's talking about me getting a job. And do some good to our kids. I guess he thinks I'm a good instructor. Great. This is another American one because ROTC stands for Reserve Officers Training Corps and is the U.S. version of the RESO program here in Canada, which stands for Reserve Entry Scheme Officer, which is the part-time program for officer cadets or naval cadets to be enrolled into the Canadian Armed Forces to become an officer before they've completed their degree. As long as you're enrolled in a full-time university program, you can start training part-time to become an officer because it's on evenings and weekends, and then full-time training in the summer. So it's a great program. And I actually was an instructor for the basic military officer qualification, and I had a great experience. It was actually my favorite part of being a basic military qualification instructor is the leadership portion in the field for officers where they have to be a section leader and execute a mission, being in command and going through the 16 steps of battle procedure. So I was an evaluator for their final test in the field where they practiced it. They did a practice run and they were evaluated on their leadership. That was a really great memory. I really enjoyed it. So yes, I agree that it's a pretty good gig to be teaching our future leaders. Fearable Bucket? Fearable Bucket, is that how you read that? Anyway, Fearable Bucket says, thinking of joining the Naval Experience Program, what are the hearing/medical requirements? You must meet the minimum Canadian Armed Forces medical standards. For the Naval Experience Program, it's the same as for everybody else. I'll link a description below because there's a ton of information. Take a look at it. It's all published online, and they even have an email address that you can email if you have specific questions that you'd like to ask about the medical standards in your case. Next one, I'm training for basic, and I was wondering what your opinions are about an individual considering the Navy who like physical work rather than sitting at a desk. With all the different occupations that we offer as a naval reservist, the most physically demanding occupation that we have here is port inspection diver. If you want to be a diver, you have to be in great shape, you have to be a very good swimmer, and they're very physically fit. Another option is a bosun. Bosons do some physical work. They're working on the deck of the ship, working with the lines, they're driving the small craft, they're working with weapons. So bosons are doing a lot of physical work. And then the last thing I'd recommend is that at the highest level in the Navy, we have the NTOG, the Naval Tactical Operations Group, who are going to have the highest level of training in the Navy for being weapons specialists and tactical. Check out the videos. They're super cool. They're super physically fit. If you want to get in the really cool combat stuff for the Navy, that would be the NTOG. Motivation for You asks, what is the best time to send in your application to join the Army as a high school student that are getting close to graduation? For the reserves, as soon as possible, sooner the better. You can join the reserves at the age of 16 as long as you have parental consent and you're completed grade 10. Because we work on evenings and weekends, you can do it while you're still in school before you graduate. So you can have a part-time job while you're still in class and a summer job while you're in school. If you're going full-time, regular force, you have to be a minimum of 17 years of age and completed grade 10. I do not recommend joining before you graduate high school, even though grade 10 is a requirement. You should finish high school. But if you are looking to do basic training as soon as you're done high school, I would say probably to be safe to apply at least 6 months before you graduate. If you've been living in Canada for more than 10 years and you're physically fit, application process shouldn't take that long, probably take about 2 or 3 months, but you never know, there can be a snag. Sometimes the application process can take a long time, especially if there are medical issues or there's lots of different things that can pop up and delay it. So if you do it, give yourself 6 months. That should be enough time to make sure that you've gone through the process and you're ready to go on basic military qualification right after you graduate high school. And even if you apply 6 months before you graduate and you do get through the application process really fast, you can say, hey, this is my graduation date. I don't want to be enrolled and go to BMQ until after I graduate, and they will definitely be accommodating of that. They can just put a hold on your enrollment until you're ready. From Anthony Marion, as someone who's interested, when in your career did you start? And what aspects of recruiting do you find most effectively speaks to young Manitobans? So as far as when I started, I joined the Naval Reserve. Immediately after high school, I applied when I was 18 years old, and I became a recruiter in 2016. So just about 10 years of working part-time, and now just about 8 years of working full-time. I go into great detail of the story of why I joined the Naval Reserve in my video, Why I Joined the Naval Reserve. So check it out. The second part of your question, earlier I was talking about how sharing my experience, I think, speaks effectively to other people because I have the positive outweighs the negative, and I just want to share the opportunity with others. As far as recruiting goes, what speaks to Manitobans, for being a reservist, I speak about what I know. I talk about being a reservist, more so than the regular force. In the reserves, you have a part-time job on evenings and weekends that you can do while you're in school, and a full-time summer job all in one. And if you plan on going to university after high school, you can receive education reimbursement of 50% of your tuition up to $2,000 per year for a maximum of $8,000. And the work that you're doing with the reserves is valuable skills that is going to give you experience and training that are going to help you on your resume. When you finish university and you're ready to hit the job market, you have great, valuable skills and experience. And don't forget that there is no long-term commitment in the reserves. You can voluntarily release at any time, and you don't get posted. You'll travel for training, but you don't have to move away from your home city. I love this comment that I got on my Skip the CFAT video. Jane Goodall, 1837, says, "The best part about being a reservist musician is being able to say no to deployments, no to training, no to postings, not having to do entire courses at once, and only having to show up when you really want to, while still getting most of the benefits associated with being in the military." I think that this was meant to have a negative undertone, kind of a burn, making fun of us, but really all of those things are true. And you can strike the word musician. That's what it's like for all reservists. You won't get posted. You don't have to move. Any deployments are voluntary unless there is an act of parliament in a national emergency. Reserves could be called in, but that hasn't happened in a long time. Not having to do entire courses at once. Yes, for reserves, many of the courses are modularized, broke down into modules so that there's not any as long periods away from home because many reservists have full-time civilian careers, and it's hard to take extended periods off from work in order to do military training. Only having to show up when you want to, that's kind of true too. Class A reservist service is voluntary. You only get paid when you show up to work, but if you can't make it down for training on a Tuesday night because you have civilian employment, you have a commitment with the university, you have an exam that night, whatever the reason is, yes, it's okay to miss training. And we don't get all of the benefits that a regular force member would or a full-time, even Class B reservist would, but you still do get many benefits as a part-time reservist. One downside of being a reservist is we don't have that long-term job security like you would in the regular force, as evidenced by me being unemployed. Would you say that your time in the Canadian Armed Forces has made a positive impact on you overall? How so? Yes, I would say that my experience so far has had a positive impact. There are certainly negative aspects to this job, and everybody has something to complain about in the Canadian Armed Forces, but the positive outweighs the negative, and I have received a lot of benefits. One example is after the birth of my son, while I was working full-time, I qualified for parental leave. I took 6 months of parental leave and got the top up to 90% of my salary. That's an incredible benefit. That was one of the best 6 months of my life, and I wouldn't trade it for anything. So there are incredible benefits with this job, and that definitely has had an impact on me. I do recommend this job to other people, not just because I'm a recruiter, but genuinely I think that it could be a good fit and a good opportunity for many people. Last one here, just a nice thank you message. Thank you, your videos were inspiring. Thank you, I very much appreciate the sentiment. Thank you for sharing, but let's lose the were. Definitely going to keep making videos. If anything, I might have more time to make more videos. I very much appreciate the questions and the kind comments. It was very cathartic for me to go through answering these questions and looking back on my time in the Naval Reserve and my time as a recruiter. I am a little bit sad to be leaving, but I'm also excited for the next chapter. I appreciate the support, and don't worry, I'll land on my feet. Thank you for watching.